report from RBC says one of the main forces that will shape Canada's economy in the decade ahead is climate change. And while it is clearly important to many Canadians, there's an ongoing debate on how to tackle it, with the federal carbon tax at the center of that story. Jonathon Wilkinson became the federal environment minister following the Liberal government's election win in October, and he joins us now from Ottawa. Minister, thanks very much for joining us.
Not at all, thank you.
I was speaking yesterday with the pollster Nick Nanos, who cited the environment as one of the top priorities for the government. So you're in the spotlight. What does that mean in terms of your priorities in this new year and this new decade?
Well, I think it is certainly an enormous priority for this government, and it's an enormous priority for this government largely because Canadians told us that it's an enormous priority for them. More than 2/3 of Canadians voted for political parties in the last election that had ambitious climate change agendas. The focus for me in this role going forward is to ensure that we are putting in place plans, finishing the implementation of work that was started under my predecessor, but elaborating on those so that we will exceed the goals that we've established for 2030, and we will be moving towards a net zero economy by 2050, going through what is fundamentally going to be a significant economic and environmental transition to address the environmental challenge of climate change, but also to ensure that Canada is a leader in looking to secure the economic opportunities that are available through that kind of a transition.
We've obviously heard lots of views on the federal carbon tax. What's the feedback that you've received in your recent conversations, in particular with different provinces?
Well, I mean, the price on pollution was certainly a significant discussion during the campaign. As I say, there was overwhelming support for Canadians for continuing on what is a market-based mechanism. It's the most efficient way to reduce emissions in this country as part of an overall suite of addressing climate change. Clearly, there are some provincial governments that are not fully in support. I've certainly had conversations with my counterparts in Saskatchewan and Alberta about this issue. And while we don't necessarily agree on this particular issue, where the federal government does believe that it is an important and responsible part of any climate plan, we do agree on many other things, and particularly on issues around things like the potential role of technology in enabling us to actually move forward on a path that allows us to continue to extract value from resources in a very low carbon world.
You talked about the economy. It seems one of the biggest questions at the end of the day is how does the government reconcile environmental aspirations, or what Canadians want to see, as you alluded to, with meat and potato issues like how do we create jobs? So how are you going to be approaching that?
Well, I think this is not simply an environmental issue, it is an economic issue. And, the estimates going forward in terms of the size of the prize for countries that are in this game early, developing technologies and deploying technologies that address some of the carbon-related issues, is enormous. It's been estimated at a $26 trillion opportunity. You talk to folks like Mark Carney, he will tell you that countries that are early in this game, that are focused on ensuring that we are doing what we can to address the climate issue in a manner that actually promotes clean growth, are the countries that are going to be successful going forward. I mean, my background is clean tech. I used to run clean tech companies. I've seen the economic opportunities that are enabled through this, and I think this is both an economic and an environmental opportunity for Canada to be a leader and to ensure that we are doing the right thing for our children and our grandchildren.
I wonder if it's any surprise that perhaps not everyone at home is always going to be aligned if it has already proven to be challenging globally, because you were in Madrid recently for a big climate conference and you had expressed your disappointment on the lack of consensus there. What was your takeaway from that?
Well, I mean, the COPs, the Conference of the Parties, which are these climate gatherings each year, are multilateral. They involve countries from around the world as well as a range of different stakeholders and interest groups. They are always a challenge in terms of managing. We didn't get all the way there. I mean, this COP, I would tell you, is not nearly as important as the COP next year in Glasgow, where countries are supposed to come back with new targets with respect to GHG reductions. But certainly the focus of the conference this year was on trying to delineate the rules around Article 6 and emissions trading around the world, which will allow countries to ratchet up the level of ambition that they have. We didn't get all the way there. We did make progress. I think we got close, and I'm quite confident that we will be able to push that over the line in Glasgow in 2020.
Now, one question some people have raised is whether the federal government would consider treating exports of cleaner LNG toward Canada's emission targets, given the theory that it would displace coal-fired generation in countries like China. Anything you can say on that front?
Yeah, I mean, that gets to the whole discussion around Article 6. And what I said before I went and what I said when I was at COP is that we need clear rules. We need it to be transparent. We need to ensure that emissions reduction, when we're trading emissions credits, that emissions reductions really are emissions reductions. And so we need that framework in order to enable things like discussions around LNG. I would tell you that LNG and the ability to displace coal does represent an opportunity for Canada, but it's an opportunity that you can only seize if, in fact, you can tie LNG exports directly to the displacement of coal-fired power. And so having a specific set of rules in place that are transparent and allow people to ensure that emissions reductions are occurring through these trading mechanisms is critical. And we said we would not support a weak regime that did not ensure that we had that kind of integrity and certainty. And we will require that going forward if trading is to be part of the overall global system.
All right, Minister Wilkinson, thanks for your time today. We appreciate it.